I'm raising the stakes right now. This is a poker game. I'm shoving my chips to the middle of the table. I'm raising the ante. Anybody wants in, get in. Anybody wants out, can get out.
We always have our chips in the middle of the table because this is Tim with Online Big Blue. We'll bring you the best of New York Giants sports talk and entertainment. It's Tuesday. We had a stream set for 4 p.m. We moved it to 8. Why? Because you know what? Life happens in between. I was thinking about it yesterday, and I was thinking about, do I want to continue doing daily Giant videos in reference to what's happening at training camp? I do think I'll address it, but honestly, training camp, especially doing it day by day, it's a time capsule. It's a time capsule of a moment. It's a moment captured in time. It does not show the totality of what is going to happen. The totality is going to equal that first preseason game. And I was thinking about that yesterday because you see all the Daniel Jones fans going, oh, look how Daniel Jones is just rocking it yesterday. Okay, it was 7-on-7 drills with a 2-man pass rush. They didn't show, people don't talk about that part. He had 2 guys with their hands in the dirt that do not move, a 2-man rush against a 4-man front with Bobby Johnson, the offensive line coach, snapping the ball. It's not a full 7-on-7 or 9-on-9 drill. It was they referred to as a half a rush. So, you know what? So, yeah, he looked great doing that. But then when he looks bad doing a full-time scrimmage, people are like, whoa, now you got the haters saying, oh, look how terrible he is. But then when he does something like this, people are like, oh, look how wonderful he is. Well, you know what? It is what it is. It's all going to come to a head once that first preseason game, once that first snap in preseason happens. That's when we're going to find out what we have. That's going to give us a better understanding. I was thinking about it, like I mentioned yesterday, I was talking something about the Giants, and we did a stream the other day. And I kept looking at Kadarius Toney and Wandale Robinson and basically saying, you know what? These guys are either going to turn into Tavon Austin or Percy Harvin. And I still believe that. I still believe that wholeheartedly. And I keep thinking to myself, if you are the Giants, if you are Joe Schoen, you technically drafted redundancy. You technically went out and got Wandale Robinson when you already have Kadarius Toney. Very similar players, except Toney's a little bit bigger of a guy, but very similar players, very similar attributes, very similar in the fact of what their skill sets are. And I laugh because, like I said, when I said it weeks ago, you know what? The Giants are probably going to run. The Giants should run a wishbone / offense or accumulated into some kind of wildcat going back to the old Pat White days in Miami.
I'm Johnny Wishbone, psychic extraordinaire. If you need me, just think Johnny Wishbone and I come running.
And I love it because someone put in the chat, and I'm not picking on anyone, but someone put in the chat goes, you didn't predict that. That's just, everyone knew that was going to happen. Really? Because I was the only one that talked about it 4 weeks ago. But then I'm thinking about it. You got 2 guys with similar assets on the same team. You got 2 players that, basically do identical things. Are they both going to be Percy Harvin? That's good. That's an interesting question. Are they both going to be Tavon Austin? People forget Percy Harvin, of course, came out of Florida, same as our old buddy Kadarius Toney, but he was a wonderkin out of Florida. He was a guy that did a little bit of everything. In his 3 seasons, he had 133 catches for 1,929 yards. He also had 13 touchdowns. He also ran the ball 194 times for 1,852 yards and 19 touchdowns. He had 32 career touchdowns, was the most ever by a wide receiver in Florida history. And he averaged 9.5 yards carried as a running back. And I mean, that's crazy. Those were crazy things. He was the first player in Florida history to rush for 1,000 yards and have 1,000-yard receiving in the same game. And that was against Vanderbilt. He was a different player in Florida. He was a difference maker. I was so excited when Percy Harvin came out because, like I said, I lived in Florida. I've been to Gainesville. I've been to Gainesville many times. I've been to many Florida games. I talk about. I'll never completely tell this story, but I tell the story somewhat of hanging out with Jesse Palmer after one of the games. I'll never tell the full story. But Percy Harvin was this kid that when he came out, he just looked like he was going to be something special. He looked like he was going to add some type of spice to the league. And he was only 5'11", 185 pounds. So he kind of falls more towards that Wandale Robinson. He's kind of in between Wandale Robinson and Kadarius Toney. He, of course, went 22nd overall to the Minnesota Vikings. What was interesting when he came out of school, I think he was the 4th receiver selected that year. And you would think with a guy that's had such attributes and such a wonderful collegiate career that he would have been selected a little higher. But the one issue is with Percy Harvin was he was not, I would say, was he as bad of a route runner coming out of a college that Tyreek Hill was? Tyreek Hill? No, he wasn't. But he had his issues. But he was a guy that could come in and return punts. He had that 88-yard kickoff. Excuse me. He had the 88-yard kickoff return for a touchdown against Pittsburgh. He finished the season with 60 receptions and 8 touchdowns, 2 kickoff returns, and also went for touchdowns. So, I mean, he was just a guy that was explosive, but he was not very polished in reference to getting ready to come into the pros. Kind of reminds you of Kadarius Toney. Kadarius Toney is looking better this year, but, we have to wait and see what happens during game time. And you have to remember, Percy Harvin kind of flamed out. After that big season in 2011, he kind of had, he was starting to have some issues with injuries and migraines, basically going into 2012, that he was shipped off to Seattle in 2013, which was good for him. He also played for the Jets. Then he was a little bit with Buffalo. But you know what? Really, after his career kind of crescendoed after 2011, his third year in the league, and then he kind of just fell off the planet. And I think that has to do more with injuries and other ancillary issues than anything else. And then you think about Tavon Austin. I remember Tavon Austin coming out of West Virginia, 5'8", 185 pounds, kind of reminds you of Wandale Robinson. He was a guy that, if you looked at his career, I mean, his last 2 seasons at West Virginia, he had 101 receptions for 1,186 yards and 8 touchdowns. And the following year, which was 2012, he had 114 receptions for 1,289 yards and 12 touchdowns as well. He was a guy that looked like he was going to be something special. The Rams actually traded up from 16 with Buffalo, which I find interesting, to get Tavon. And Tavon was another guy who if you want to take a look at his career, his route running coming out of West Virginia was not stellar. Was not something that it's not like to me, it's like he didn't really 100% work on his trade. That first season in St. Louis, playing on the turf, 40 receptions for 418 yards, 10.5 yards of reception for 4 touchdowns. And then his big totals were 243, 437, 509, and then 47 yards. And then he went over to Dallas in 18, and he had 140 yards, 177, then 20 yards, and then over that in Green Bay. Then he was over in Jacksonville last year for 213 yards. Again, they tried to use him out of the backfield. His biggest season was going to be in 15 out of the backfield with 52 carries for 434 yards, 8.3 yards a carry. He was just a guy that you were thinking you were going to get more than you did. You really did. You thought you were going to get more of him out of the punt return game. You thought you were going to get more of the the kickoff game in reference to kickoffs directly. But he's just a guy that he just could never find his niche. And I worry because, he was referred to as the ultimate, the same with Percy Harvin. He was referred to as the ultimate jackknife player, the ultimate do-all player, the gadget player. Well, right now, his NFL career consists of 244 receptions for 2,239 yards and 16 touchdowns. And then he added another 1,300 yards rushing with 10 touchdowns. So he's got a grand total of 29 touchdowns since being in the league since 2013. So, I mean, where do Kadarius and where do Wandale fall in that spectrum and that gauge between Percy Harvin and Tavon? You hope, like I said, you have eerie similarities when you look at Kadarius Toney and Percy Harvin. You really do have eerie similarities. Not in reference to what they did in college, but because there was no match what Percy Harvin did in college, but what they did in reference to their abilities, the reference to their route running, the reference to, what they can do in this league. Now, I am excited to see Kadarius have a better season or a better opportunity. But like I said, he's got to figure out how to stay in his lane and how to run his routes. He really does. That is the biggest thing. You can be a jitterbug all you want, but that's easy for the defense to defend. And we've talked about that a million times. But he needs to show more consistency in his route running, and he needs to show more consistency to, basically to stay on the field. I'm expecting bigger things from Kadarius this year than last year, because you almost have to. because of the fact that you can't rely on your rookie Wandale Robinson to come in at his size and be that go-to guy, that every down guy, because at 5'8", he's not going to be that guy. He's going to be the jackknife. He's going to be the jack of all trades. So you're hoping that Kadarius finds his way onto the outside. Maybe he finds his way into the wide receiver 2 position. You don't know. Because you're going to need to move Wandale in the slot. You're going to need to move him out of the backfield. And you're going to have to try to create mismatches for Wandale because of his size. At the end of the day, I think both guys are going to be fine. I think if you want to look at someone that may have more of an opportunity to create an impact for the Giants, you have to hope it's Kadarius Toney because of the fact that he has a little bit more size to play on the outside. And you hope you can keep him on the field much longer and for more snaps than you probably will for Wandale Robinson. I'm hoping one of these guys can return kickoffs and punts, and we can kind of go from there. Don't forget, we got a big stream coming up at 8 p.m. tonight. It is Wednesday. Is it Wednesday? I don't know what day it is. It's tonight. Whatever day August 3rd is, that's the day the stream is. It is a Wednesday. And again, this is Tim with Online Big Blue. Johnny Wishbone, but we got to close it up this way. And again, this is Tim with Online Big Blue, bringing you the best in New York Giants sports talking entertainment. And as always, if you like, if you subscribe, if you ring that bell, you know what it means. That'd be awesome.